Okay, this is my, before I start, this is my vlog for the third lesson, which is the paper by Cobb and Muhammad. I've reviewed the paper, I've read it very carefully, and I learned a lot from it, and it's very interesting. I also read another paper after that from these cited papers by Cobb and Muhammad, and that was about what is recovery, which I find it a very interesting topic. So I had a lot of notes, so I had to shrink all my notes several times before I can record the video, because I have a lot of definitions, writings, points, and all of that. So I know we have only 10 minutes video to present on. So we'll see how I can fit everything I learned with this 10 minutes. So we'll start by now. So this paper, I've learned that neuroplasticity is not a unified process, and it's a multidimensional process. But what we need to research is what factors and how they influence this process. The challenges in research about regarding research, like researching, studying the influential factors, is about there are five challenges. One is about the behavioral neuroscience, that it's a correlational science. So this makes it as we cannot claim causation when we are researching the connection between neurology and behavior, especially that there's all the manipulation in between. The other challenge is about recovery, and that is can be explained by the three-legged cat problem: compensation or recovery. The problem with the differences between animals' brains and human brains. So in lab we can do the animals' brains which have way less white matter compared to the a human brain, and the injuries in the lab are well organized, has little variance, very specific, and this is not realistic in real world, because humans, when they get the injury, it gets even like more severe, or more than what can be performed in lab. Also, that the changes of behavior can also be influenced by organs functioning or dysfunctioning. So whether the change came from the brain directly, or it's just by blood pressure or whatever else is going on. The other issues about bilateral injuries for animals, that's another issue, that bilateral injuries in animals, that's what we have to do in lab, but we can't do that because that does not tell us a lot about the common unilateral injuries in human being. The principles of plasticity that I learned a lot. I can't talk about all of them, but what is the most interesting one was that when experience dependent change. I like that one because I learned about metaplasticity, and that the effect of experience is accumulated effect, and the history of each patient is different, so the outcome of every injury and recovery would be different from one person to another. And that was very interesting, like to have this term as metaplasticity. I like it. Anyway, so that's and there are other principles. The 9 or 10 principles I learned from there. They're all about the nature of how neuroplasticity process to change the brain and change the outcome. Now, in terms of how do we use it in lab, how to use it to for recovery outcomes, according to the authors of the paper, that we have to start by lab animals and then gradually start to generalize the findings and to human brain, to human brain. Okay, also the cell-based therapy, that was very also interesting. piece of information that I learned there. What is interesting that I have learned the growth factors, and the how those growth factors can be induced in the injured brain, and that was from the lecture, and how that can lead to recovery, like regrowing the missing tissues. What is interesting here is that they're using also stem cells. So now we have the stem cells with the growth factors, and how they are thinking about where is this gonna go in the future. It's also interesting. The paper I read about, I chose the recovery and compensation to know more about, based on my study of Kalb and Muhammad's paper. So I read this paper, and I like that from their perspective is recovery can be defined from a clinical perspective, which means can the patient function independently or no, and that's the goal of the clinical intervention. That's a good beginning for me to know how we can define this. So also how they are looking at the focusing on long-term functional outcomes instead of focusing on restoring the lost behavior. So it's not a matter of just retrieving the lost behavior, but how the patient can actually create new ways of coping and relying on the neuroplasticity of the brain to get into there. Also what I also find is notable for me is that when we get to the long-term functioning, this will lead actually the patient to lead the neuroplasticity to enhance their recovery in the future. So if the patient can begin with any of the recovery of their functionality, that might get them into retrieving the lost behavior. So in that paper I learned about how injury induced cascade of growth related events. So when the brain is injured, the brain is become motivated to recover and create more dynamics and substance and chemicals and activities to recover from that injury, and also also increase the expression of growth promoting genes, which begins to be seen shortly after the injury. That's interesting. Like even the genes can change to find ways for the patient or the animal to function according to what they need to do after the injury. The neuroactivity is activated by injury component. Oh, sorry, no. Okay. Again, now, what behavior change we expect to see after recovery? That's a question they asked in their paper, and the way the way to answer this question is by studying the intact brain the brain of the intact animal, and that will help us know how the brain is gonna behave after the injury. There's lots of information there, I just don't know which one to pick. But anyway, one of the noted conclusions by the paper that I did wrote down as notes, so the mechanisms of recovery and compensation is a phenomena that allow adaptation to changing environment. So the brain by its nature is actually ready to compensate. Neuroplasticity rely on hierarchy of behaviors to achieve a big behavioral recovery. So probably the brain is prioritizing which behaviors start first, and this has a lot of implications on therapeutic interventions and strategies and outcome, because where the brain is putting this energy of recovery, probably that's where the as a beginning after injury, and then going all the way in the hierarchy of behaviors. That's where the intervention needs to focus. And last thing is that plastic strategies after injury are like the ones used in normal brains. And this is my video. I hope that I was able to summarize all what I have learned. It's a lot, so it's okay if it was not all there. Anyway, okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate that the course. I appreciate all the information, and it really made me interested more about knowing. I don't know if I'll be able to find ways to know more in the future, but thank you very much for this course, and enjoy the rest of your summer. Bye bye.